Hi, everybody.
Okay.
And let me handle that. So, quick intro. We have John speaking for us today. He has been with us the entire course so far. But I'll go ahead and give you a little bit of reminder of like what he does. Mr. Chavez currently serves as a managing director for the New Mexico Startup Factory. He has a lot of experience in funding, finding investments, and then he currently serves on the Ascend Hub's External Advisory Committee. And he's going to be talking to us today about like financing and funding and things along those lines. And before I turn it over to John, I just want to remind you guys that you do have the opportunity to present a pitch deck at the last meeting of this course. So I'm just sort of reminding you, in case you haven't gotten that together, feel free to reach out to me or Michael with questions if you need any advice. I'll share after this meeting a pitch deck template with you all. And I think that covers my reminders for today. So I'll pass it over to you, John.
Great. Thank you all for showing up. Just a little bit of background. I have Andrea Garcia, who worked with me at the New Mexico Startup Factory. And then Miss Alyssa Firestone also works with us. And what I want to do today is really have an interactive kind of discussion and a little bit about my background. I've been an angel investor since 2004. I've ran the New Mexico Angels for 12 years from 2008 to 2020. I've started 2 venture capital funds and continue to create companies, create educational products, do presentations. And it's just really a passion to be able to work with the universities and the people out there who are trying to take technology from the lab or the classroom and move it out into the marketplace. So once again, thank you all for showing up. This is being recorded, and so we're going to share it with everyone else. And what I'd like to do is just start with a share screen. And one of the things we're going to talk about financing, but can you see that?
We see a gray screen right now.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's still gray.
Let me try again. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So our company is called the New Mexico Startup Factory. And essentially what we do is we source technology from technology institutions such as UNM, NASA, Cedars-Sinai. We've done a deal with Auburn. But the idea is we have this really good checklist to go through when we look at a technology and we're trying to evaluate it for value, okay? And so what we do first is we always look at the kind of people that we need to move the company forward. And typically a PI or a student or an entrepreneur is the company founders. And then we look for what kind of financial advisors we need to help the company, executive leadership, data engineers, sales team, administrative team, board of directors, advisors, IP attorney, and deal attorney. So that's just one of the buckets that we look at when we want to engage an institution about doing technology transfer. And then we look at the intellectual property behind that. Most technology-based firms have something that is their foundation. You know, Google has their algorithm patents. Drug companies have their patents that they have for their therapeutics or their devices or their biomarkers. Some people have copyrights, and then having to work with an institution, what is the licensing agreement going to look like? And then the infrastructure, what kind do we need to build a successful company? And then we look at the product. In many cases, we do a lot of biotech. So we focus on therapeutics, biomarkers. We're looking at some platforms for data to be shared with the world. And then product development. How do we develop that product in a way that makes sense for the company? And then we do a lot of customer discovery. And sometimes we don't do enough, which we're learning right now with one of our companies. Is we have a great product, but we're not sure what it costs to, we know what it costs to create it, but we don't know what the customers are willing to pay for it. So we do the customer discovery. We do the marketing report. We do the customer analysis. And then we look at the finance, what is the kind of things we're going to need to build this company? Accounting structure. Are we going to be a LLC, a C Corp? Are we going to not do any of that till we get some funding? Those kind of things. And then you want to create a budget. And then the capital need of when and where. How much capital do you need to start the company? And then how much do you need to move it to the next level? And then we talk about term sheets and a pitch deck. So once again, this is our analysis, and it's just a really good template, and we'll share it with Faith so she can send it out to everybody about what to think about when you're trying to create something that may be the next Google or the next Pfizer, or one that may be started and not go very well, the nature of the world we live in. So before I go into the other pitch deck, any questions about that? Okay, so we're going to go into walking through the financing your startup. So here's our discussion: entrepreneurs, angel investors, the engagement, and then the deal. So as entrepreneurs, you wake up in the morning and sometimes you go, what am I doing? I've given up my job. I've given up my professorship. What have I gotten myself into? And then you start thinking about why you want to do this. And we started a company to do a therapeutic for stroke, and we really thought we could change the world. We still have the company, but it's a struggle because stroke is a very, very difficult disease to deal with. And then really the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs say, and I hear it all the time, I know that someone wants to buy my product. And as an entrepreneur myself, I say that every day, all the time. So, as you think about your company, the idea has to be addressed of what is my financing strategy? And that can be, okay, I just need enough money to create the product while I keep my own job, or I need to quit my job and have enough money to feed and water myself. And so those things come up. So what are the company needs? What am I willing to pay for outside money? And what value proposition do I bring to the potential customer? And what value can I bring to investors? Because you're going to need both. You're going to need a potential customers, strategic partners, and you're going to need investors who share your vision, your passion to bring something really cool to market. So one of the things you always want to think about when you're building a company is, okay, what are the risks that I can identify for the investors? Now think about this. There's technology risk. Will my product work? How much money is it going to take to make that product work? Will the market accept my product? Does it change the needle enough for customers? The financial risk. How much money does it take to develop a product? And how much does it take to take that product to market? And then really a big risk, and we'll talk about that, is the people. Do I have enough of the people necessary to build this company that we can mitigate the risk of not having a really good team? And then you want to look into the marketplace and say, what other companies like mine are raising money and how are they doing it? What are my competitors or other companies like mine doing to receive financial support? And you can think about SBIRs, STTRs, angel funding, strategic partner money, or mom and dad. I mean, is that the only money you need? And have I done the customer discovery to ensure that the customers need and want my product? And I got to tell you, the more customer discovery, the better off you will be. And then lastly, do you have that skill set to raise money for my company? And raising money is totally different than creating a molecule or creating a platform to identify antibodies that may or may not work in a therapeutic. So once again, thinking about your strategy, what do I think my company's worth? You know, I've had, hundreds of meetings with potential entrepreneurs and companies, and I always get I ask the question, well, what's your company worth? And someone will always go, it's not worth anything. And then the question goes, well, why are you talking to me? You do have to have an idea of what your company's worth before you start talking to not only companies, investors, but also funders from the NIH, from the DoD, from NSF kind of thing. And then, do I have the team to execute the plan? We see a number of deals where it's a single person that comes into us and say, I got the greatest idea in the world. And we say, great idea, you need to go out and create a team. And in doing so, you have more than the individual that has the passion, the idea. You have a number of skill sets that are necessary to move this company from concept into creation into execution. And then what terms would I like in my financing? We've talked to hundreds of entrepreneurs, and some always say, well, I don't want to give up 50%. And we tell them, we don't want you to give up 50%. We believe that, we'll take a nice chunk to do the deal.
John, we lost
to
you.
be the person that gets.
John, are you there?
Question is, what is my company worth before I start talking to investors? And once again, you can go on the internet and put in all some metrics and a valuation model and come up with an evaluation before you even get investor money. If you have a team, if you have some IP, if you have a good marketing concept, if you have a plan to execute. So after you answer all these questions, you go, now what? And then really one of the first place to look for in the biotech space, if you're a new biotech individual, if you haven't done it in the past, is angels. And angels are really big in the biotech space, and they do a lot of deals. So these are some stats that we pulled out from 2017. Probably in 2021, it was about $30 billion in investment. Typically, and we've seen this over the last 10 years, about 70 to 75,000 companies receive angel investment. And an average deal is about $330,000 in the first tranche with angels at a valuation of $2 million. Now, those stats have changed. So right now, the average angel deal is about $4 million pre-money valuation. So that's good for entrepreneurs because that just says that the market is really accepting of new opportunities and there's angels that are willing to fund these kind of deals. So just some statistics of, this is from the Angel Capital Association. And these are things that are just what happens when someone presents to an angel group. Angel funded firms are most likely to receive additional financing once they get funding from angels. And also they have a tendency to last a lot longer than just non-angel funded deals. And it's also shown that angel funded deals, it's more likely to be successful just because the angels talk to each other, the angels help you with your opportunity with advice and consent, and they push out information to their networks about what they've done and who they've invested in. The first time you meet an angel group is really predicated on if you have a good presentation and getting that angel investment. I always say that I mentally write a check when I see a deal and say, okay, I think I'm going to do $15,000, $25,000. And then it's up to the entrepreneur to prove me wrong through the due diligence process. The other thing that angels bring to companies is they bring advice, consent, contacts, strategic relationships that can help you grow your company in a way that makes sense for you as an entrepreneur. So once again, looking at some of the things that happen and what angels look for is they look for a barrier to entry, patents, trade secrets, maybe some secret sauce, a management team, and this is so key. Our venture fund reviewed a deal last night, and the committee that does the review recognized that the management team for this company just wouldn't work because everybody was involved. There was no one in charge. All 5 founders had an equal say, and that's great until something goes wrong, and then there's no accountability. It's got to be scalable. So think of a cell phone and how that can be built over and over and over again, or software, or therapeutic drug. You make it, you get it approved by the FDA, and then you just make a ton of them. And then a willingness for growth and mentorship. You know, we mentor our companies a ton. We do a lot of mentoring on the side for UNM, for Los Alamos National Labs, for NMSU. And it's really about creating an ecosystem of access to people who've done this before and understand how to do it. And sometimes we do it wrong, like our customer discovery for our one company. And then you're looking for, from an investor perspective, you're looking for an investment of at least 10 times your money between 5 and 10 years. You know, that typically doesn't happen because you want to build a portfolio as an investor. And typically you make money on, out of 10 deals, you make money on, 2 or 3 of them. And that's how you keep this thing going forward. So how do I start when I talk to angels? One of the things we tell everybody, just be there. Show up at the Student Business Association, show up the Chamber of Commerce, show up at, your technology transfer events. Just be there, because that way you get contacts, you get engaged, and people want to see you before they get pitched. Here we go in New Mexico, we have the Global Rainforest, there's the Angel Capital Association, there's Million Cups, there's NM Bio. We're members of the Indian Chamber of Commerce. We're members, we're helping the University of New Mexico with their hackathon. And so once again, just get engaged, because you never know when you're going to talk to someone and they go, hey, I know about this stuff, or I know somebody that knows about this stuff, or I know someone that knows about this stuff, that knows about somebody who's investing in this stuff. So once again, that engagement and that contacts are very, very important. So with an investor, whether it be a funder from the NIH, an angel, or a venture capitalist, you always want to set up a meeting, and you want to set expectations. So your first meeting is not to get them to invest. Your first meeting is to get them to come back to you after they've done some review, done a search on you on the internet, on your team on the internet, on your intellectual property on the internet, and then come back to you and say, okay, let's talk again. So when we talk to entrepreneurs, you always say, create a pitch deck, have your team review it, have your outside advisors review it, and then practice, 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 practice. Presenting your pitch. So typically, these pitches can be anywhere from 5 to 12 minutes. We've done 1 minute to 15, but typically they want you to be focused on how they want to see the information, and Be very, very concise. Use few words, use lots of pictures. Follow the guidelines that your investors give you and practice, practice, practice. And the end goal is to have a high level summarized view of the company to excite investors. So once again, investment success is highly predicated on the first engagement. And if it is, and if your presentation was successful, then you get to say, okay, I've got enough interest, I move into the next step. And the next step is what we call due diligence. And essentially, that is where you go out and you, once again, you're setting expectations. This is the company we have. This is the product we have. This is the investment that we need. Here's the budget for the investment we need. And here's us as a team, the passion that we have to move this thing forward. And so there's a ton of follow-up. There's meeting, there's drinks, there's coffee, there's lunch. It's really that engagement for the investors to get to know who you are and what makes you tick. We do a data dump where we ask for a ton of information, including references, financial models, financials that you have, your corporate documents, professional experience, so that we can learn about who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it, and why we should invest in you. Then we ask for a financial overview. Where are you at today? How much money are you looking for from the investors? And what does that do? How does that create value for you as a team, but also for the investors? In addition, how much money is it going to take for you to go to market so that you can be successful? Because your first investment may be $250,000 or $500,000, and get you to a point where you're developing a product, a service in biotech. You got to do a bunch of data collection tests, and what does that $500,000 get you, and how much value do you create to get to the next level? And then lastly is your team overview. Who's your team? Not only your management team, but your board of directors, your advisors, and those kind of things. And then we set more expectations. And you can see a theme here. It's always about setting expectations so that everybody knows what they're looking for, what they're looking at, and what they want to accomplish if they get to an end line of a deal. More follow-up meetings, company information, your investment thesis. Why would people invest in you? Is your product going to cure cancer? Is your product going to make it easier to detect COVID, diabetes, Alzheimer's? And then that customer discovery that you've done, that is so important, so that the investor knows what the customer is looking for, what they're willing to pay, and how they're going to engage you as a provider of X, Y, and Z. And then lastly, we always look at the intellectual property. It's so important because that's your foundation. That's what's keeping other folks out of your marketplace, because you have that intellectual property to really keep other people from doing what you're doing. So the last thing to look at is the deal finalization. You got to set terms. Words become written documents. I've talked to these investors. We think we're going to do a pre-money of $4 million. They're going to invest in $500,000. It's going to be a convertible note. The term sheet is a document that articulates the words in written form about outlining a deal, on how to invest, and for the company, how to take that investment. And then always encourage everybody on both sides of the table to bring in experienced legal counsel to make sure that what's written is what's been talked about and what's been agreed upon, and that the deal is done correctly. So closing the deal, once again, you have to sign the term sheet. You've got the continued due diligence, continued investor education. And then what we do with our deals is we do what's called a capital call, where we say, John Chavez, you've indicated an interest, you're going to put in $25,000. Here's the deal, here's the deal docs. We need to have you deposit that money, and we're going to send it over to the company in 2 weeks. So sort of a concise presentation, but more than willing to answer any questions that you all have regarding the deck, financing, finding mentors, whatever you think is important. So, questions? A lot of information. John, come on, you're always good for questions.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through all the aspects, right? And you're right, there's a lot of information because you just went from, hey, I have an idea, to your idea needs to be good enough to get money, but you need the money to generate your idea, right? So it's kind of that cycle is what I'm thinking through these. Well, maybe an individual like myself would be considering gaps that might seem insurmountable without having done more work and have already had some funding to show some credibility or progress. And so I guess the question is, where do you start, right, in order to get to a point where you can be taken seriously and not have just an idea?
Right. That is such a good question, John. Where to start is looking at you and your company as a team that can execute on a very high level plan. So think about in the diagnostic space. Okay, so you have a biomarker that detects X, right? So I'm going to need someone to lead the company. I'm going to need someone to do the development of the biomarker. I'm going to need someone to figure out the customer discovery, and I'm going to need someone to keep the ship going forward in a positive way. So think about your team creation first, because once again, you can come to investors and say, I got a great idea, but they're going to go, okay, so who's going to do the test for you? Who's going to figure out who the customer is, who you're going to sell this to, those kind of things. And you can start small, and you can start part-time, and you can even start with a team that is sort of in vaporware. Okay, I talked to Michael, he's coming on board upon financing to do X, Y, and Z. I've talked to Melissa, she's coming on board once we get the first financing necessary to move this company forward. And so those are things that can be dealt with, but really creating a team that can articulate your vision and your passion is really a really great starting point. Because the intellectual property, the business development plan, that can be done secondly. But having a team to help you build that out is just, that's why Melissa and Andrea are here. That's what they do. So
I was just going to support John in exactly what he said, is
Yeah.
the team is the most important part, in my opinion and my experience. And we not only look for it in the companies that we have under our portfolio and who we help to move forward, but we look for it internally as well. If it wasn't for our team, we would not be moving forward as a group. So I cannot express how much I completely support that.
Yeah. Yeah.
however, we do make mistakes, and I'll point this out, and I want to highlight Melissa is one of two people who brought this to us. We have this really neat cell phone device that we think is the best thing since sliced bread. So it's just like, think of a car shield that you put on your car and you fold it up. Well, this thing can focus radio waves to make your cell phone go from 0 bars to 2, 3 in places that you, and we're thinking, we can sell this for a ton of money. And it's like, well, maybe the market isn't at this high, it's maybe this high. So we have to do further customer discovery before we can take it into the marketplace. Now, the margins are really sweet. So whether it's 300 or 200, we're still making some really high quality margins, but the model changes because instead of selling 50,000 at $300, you sell $1 million at $175. we're still doing that. So even we do make mistakes
Sure.
and recognize that we did make a mistake.
Well, and I do like that you brought that up though, because it goes right back to customer discovery and how important it is to keep that going. And anybody that's been in marketing or anybody that has had any experience in business or sales or anything in the past, they will tell you market analysis, customer discovery are bottom line, the most important things that you can possibly do to move your business forward. So well done. Yay.
Thank you for that. I heard a couple of things while you're describing those situations and those answers. And one is I hear build a great team, right? And because your team is going to be the foundation that for which you're going to be evaluated upon. And if long as you have a team that looks like it can go from A to B, then we can deal with the journey and the challenges that come up along the way. But then what I also hear is I need money to pay a team that is really good, but I'm only going to be able to raise $250,000 for to meet a milestone that is 12 months out, right? And so I don't know really great teams that could work for 12 months on $250,000 and do biotech development. So I like the gated approach to your employees, right? So now what? I need volunteer scientists and supply chain managers, et cetera, right? So you see the conundrum that I'm talking about.
So it is totally a conundrum. However, think of resources that you can tap. So there's SBIRs, there's SCTRs. I mean, they take a little while. And think of the long game, right? You always want to think of the long game, because you can submit an SBIR in January 4th, which we did. We won't know about it till April, and it won't get funding till July. So that's a 6-month period, right?
Yep.
But there are other resources out there. In New Mexico, they have science and technology grants, $25,000 for early stage companies. There's investors, friends and family that can put in money. You got to make sure you document everything and do the proper valuation. And the other thing is, a lot of people see a startup, and if you have that passion, are willing to work after hours doing your regular job. And we have one company that we just engaged, a guy has a job, but we don't have the skill set that he has to do customer fulfillment and things like that. And he's going, I want to help you. I can help. I have a job, but I want to engage with you to help you guys do X, Y, and Z. It's part of being the ecosystem. And if I think Boise has 10 million cups. I think they do. And it's a good way to engage people who are looking for opportunities. Either they're retired, they sold their company, and they just want to get involved in things. And sometimes you don't have to pay them, and sometimes you get what you paid for, right? Nothing, but you still it's a good way to engage people. So, and John, I'm not saying it's easy.
Right.
It is really hard to raise money. But if you can articulate your value and your passion, there's people that are doing deals. Melissa.
Also, working with local companies, universities to find interns, which is what we do too.
Yeah.
And you get really great workers and they get great experience.
Yeah, so that's another funding opportunity.
And then John, do you real quick want to talk about like taking a little bit of a step back from that for the team creation?
Sure.
Where can you go to find, potential team members? Can you maybe talk to angel groups? Like what resources are out there to help build the team?
So just think about your vertical, right? So I'm in New Mexico. There's the New Mexico Technology Council that focuses on computing, IA, SaaS, software. We also have NM Bio, and they focus on biotech. And then we have our institutions of higher learning, UNM, and they, like Michael, it's next week, we have the hackathon at the University of New Mexico Health Sciences Center, where you come together, you eat pizza and drink, I don't think you have beer, but you drink Cokes, and you get together with these teams that come up with ideas that may potentially be companies. And then you spend the weekend coming up with the customer discovery, what it would take to create a company, your team members, and then you pitch it on Sunday. And if you do well, you get $10,000 to move the company, the entity or the group forward in a meaningful way. So, think about your school. Do they have a biotech group? Do they have a group that talks about an entrepreneurial group, and engage with them to try and find team members? And we're looking for a CEO of this company that has a cell phone booster. We're talking to everybody. We're talking to our friends, we're talking to our neighbors, we're talking to senators, our state senators, our economic development department, just creating that buzz, and hopefully we'll find the right person to move this thing from, we got the product, we've created it, and now we got to sell it. But once again, it's about that engagement kind of thing.
And just real quick, a couple other resources that came to mind as John was talking. Each state has a small business administration. So that's always a resource you can use to, pretty broad range of things that they can help you with. And then the other is for the customer discovery, iCorp. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, run a program specific for customer discovery. So it's from anything from students to faculty, and essentially over, I think it's a 4-week or a 6-week course. You get split up into teams that are specific for your technology. And you just work on the customer discovery with that team for a couple months to get everybody some experience doing that. So it's more of a higher level customer discovery, but it's still very helpful to get you started on that.
And it also helps to validate what you're doing. So we've got one of our companies that we started out of Portfolio 3 that went through the iCorp program. And one of the reasons why they are, why investors are interested in them is because they've already completed those steps that were part of that program. And not only that, but it makes it more, it makes people like John, Melissa, and I more interested in investing and helping and moving people forward when you've gone through those types of programs where you're doing the diligence on your part to help us come in and help in the stages after that. So Michael, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is a big thing. And you know which company I'm talking about. So yeah.
So one of the other things to think about within this vertical is the NIH SBIR STTR program. Granted, when I first started investing, I used to think it was awful for anybody to get STTR SBIR because I thought it diluted the focus of the company. But as I've grown older and gotten gray hair, it's if you focus your efforts on developing the product and doing the tests and the data collection necessary for biotechs and therapeutics, it makes a lot of, it does create value. And it's difficult to get them, but even just putting together a grant application allows you to focus what you need to do to move it to the next level. And, I have to give kudos to both Andrea and Melissa. And Andrea knows exactly how to make everything right with SAMs and ERA Commons and all the things you need to do to do a grant, where I'm just, I can't do that. I mean, don't have that skill set, but you need someone, and Ascend can help. NMSU has a SBIR program I think you all might be involved in, and they can help you figure out how to register your company in order to have access to this type of non-dilutive funding.
And John,
in that Ascend program. Sorry, I said I am working through that Ascend program with Faith and Michael here to write an SBIR grant now. And you're right, just putting it together and starting to find your gaps, if nothing else, is really useful, especially as I'm structuring the team. I've got some feedback from the program officers, and they're actually really helpful in that they give you very focused feedback. Tell me, it's not about the potential of a product, for example, right? They're saying, you got to both tell me you're going to put this on a diabetic foot, for example, to heal it, as opposed to initial viability testing or cytotoxicity testing. So yeah, I think that the program is really great. And like you mentioned, it's kind of a slow process. And that's what prevented us in my last company from going that route. Is we just want to put the time and effort into trying to wait around for that thing. But I think I'm currently in a position now, because I'm not in a rush to bring in the money in private funding, to use an SBIR to kind of get that initial credibility and initial experience, and then take that forward and try to work with an angel group and have a little bit more. And I just I'm just hoping, I guess I'm assuming, or it's my strategy that will pay off, to wait as opposed to run now to take private equity money. Instead take non-diluted funds. And so I guess maybe a little conversation about the strategy, or it should be a combination of both now, and keep trying at SBIRs.
Yeah. That's the beauty of getting told no. They tell you why they told you no.
Yeah.
And that way you can resubmit. And sometimes, we've actually done worse than the resubmission, which is sort of scary. But I mean, that's just part of the process. And it's totally fun when you get that email saying, oh, you got an impact score of 18. You're going, never seen one of those before, but hey, I'll take it. And I mean, it's really cool that now you have to do the work. You have to set up everything, make sure you can meet the milestones and things like that. So anything else before we close?
Yeah, it's Monica. I just wanted to say a few things, just impressions. My background is the arts and theater, and there's always a lot of hustling and trying to raise money for projects. And what I always learned was, and I think you were showing this in your presentation, even though it was kind of underneath, is that people don't necessarily fund projects or ideas, they fund people. And they fund people. They need to relate to that person, because they're going to be engaging with that person over time, probably in some challenging situations, and you want to be able to feel something with that person.
Right.
And so the due diligence is both with finding the right angel investor. And to me, when you're talking about the team, it's the same whether it's my team that I'm putting together. They need to also have a good relationship and interest together, and there has to be a level of buy-in. There has to be some sweat equity. If people are just there because they want to make a salary, they're probably not the best people to be in a startup. And the other thing is that as that team, in a way, the angel investors and their support, it becomes an expansion of the team, because the team keeps expanding until it meets the consumer, right?
Yeah.
And so you just have to keep thinking of every layer of people as expanding your team. And that's why the due diligence about customers is so important, because they have to relate to you too on some level. That's ultimately what you're heading towards. Those are just some of the responses I had.
Can I have you talk to this portfolio company we talked to this morning?
Of course. I'd love to.
That's the challenge with them.
For $250,000, John, I'd be happy to do that.
I mean,
a little honorarium.
We have a situation where they have a product, but they hired someone that is a corporate person who wants to do planning. And I'm saying, you got to get up every morning and say, I'm not planning, I'm selling. And they just can't get that connection.
That's a very good point.
In their life cycle, they need to sell the product, and then they can plan. Once they get some nice revenue up, then they can plan all they want. But now's not the time to plan. They need to execute. So
Yeah, and those meetings, all the times of having coffee or drinks or talks, I mean, that's where an idea evolves when you have a conversation with someone
Yeah.
about it, when you try to explain it to someone, and that is the best way to always develop anything.
Yeah.
Not here.
Well, thank you all so much. Have a great day. Faith will send you my email, and we're going to continue to be involved in this process over the next couple of weeks. So glad to be here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
Real
Right.
quick, Faith, before you do the update for next week. So I did post the iCorps link in the chat. I think the next session they're running is in July. So if you are interested in that, there's a link in it. You can look at their homepage and see what they do and stuff like that too.
I just also wanted to say, Faith, did you send out a syllabus for today? Because I didn't receive one.
There was not a syllabus for today, but there will be a syllabus.
Thank
for
you. Okay.
Yeah, this session was kind of
It's
added.
it's a new edition, so, but a very important thorough edition, but yeah, so. All right, I will see you guys next Wednesday. I'll be sending a couple resources as well as the syllabus over after today's meeting. If you guys have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out, and see you in a week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.